what am I, the bearer of bad news? I'm afraid we have to talk about Coillte, Ireland's semi-state for-profit logging company, which inexplicably is also tasked with caring for our forests, much like when I let my cats look after the bird sanctuary. Ireland gained independence, but we never reclaimed the land spiritually or ecologically. When the state was founded, just 1% of our land was covered with native trees. Today, we've made incredible strides forward. It's just under 2%. It's astonishing to me that in over a century, we've been unable to increase the native forest cover by less than 1%. Although maybe embarrassing is a better word. I think astonishing is getting off too lightly there. Houdini was astonishing, this is just embarrassing. We have the lowest native forest cover in Europe. Even if we quadrupled it, we'd still come last. And you might be thinking, well, Kevin and I see plenty of trees when I drive through the countryside on my jaunts. But these aren't forests, friend, they're crops. Just a plantation grown for maximum yield and minimum life. Almost all of our forests are Sitka spruce and non-native species from North America. It's not reforestation, it's monoculture. Ireland's ecology had been battered for centuries, but in 1988, that year, a new semi-state body was created with a simple mandate: manage Ireland's forests. Its name was Coillte, and on paper, it sounded hopeful. Finally, a national effort to bring back the trees. But of course, as we all know, that's not what happened. Instead of restoring native forests, Coillte became a logging company with a green PR strategy. Their focus: fast-growing trees, short-term profits, and a deep, sick obsession with spruce. This isn't forestry. It's forestry-themed capitalism, and is costing us our soil, our water, and any real hope of ecological recovery. This approach hasn't just failed to restore nature, it's damaging it in real time. Fertilizers used to speed up growth have run off into rivers, choking them with algae. In Connemara, Coillte tried to fell over 300 hectares of trees, but Galway County Council blocked them because even dead plantations can hold a place better together than bare soil after felling. Back in 2006, they didn't meet this kind of resistance. That year, Coillte was found to be using 4 times the legal limit of fertilizer. If you were using 4 times the legal limit of something, you might be put in jail, depending what you're doing and if you're driving or not. By using 4 times the amount of legal limit of fertilizer, they wiped out freshwater pearl mussels in the Onarif River. It was an act so reckless that even the Department of the Environment said they were stunned. They were stunned. Coillte, you stunned us with your reckless murder of all these freshwater mussels. In the years since, the state has had to step in, not with reform, no, don't be silly, but with restrictions. The Department of Agriculture introduced a ban on clear felling around 25 rivers. That's where we're at, legislating against our own forestry agency to stop them from damaging the environment. And just as the state was finally beginning to rein in Coiltte's worst excesses, introducing bans, setting limits, and trying to undo decades of damage, another crisis was already taking root. Can we get a break here? One that exposed yet again how slow we are to act and how little has really changed beneath the surface. Because while we were legislating to protect rivers from runoff, we weren't watching what was happening to the trees themselves. By the time we noticed ash dieback, it was already here. A devastating fungal disease. It's a fungal disease. And somehow it reached Ireland before it ever touched England. An official 2021 report from the Department of Agriculture calls its arrival a complex and unresolved mystery. They claim the disease was only detected in 2012, but had likely been here for years beforehand. The symptoms are visible. The dieback is dramatic, so the idea that it was quietly spreading here for years undetected doesn't really hold up. By framing the disease's arrival as a mystery, Coillte and the Department of Agriculture are deflecting accountability, shifting focus away from long-term decisions that prioritise short-term production over long-term health. And yet, some people have taken this mystery and run in an entirely different direction. There's a growing theory online that ash dieback was caused by chemtrails, chemical agents dropped from planes to kill the trees on purpose. And I want to tell you that that's not true. Stop spreading that. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Coillte released this conspiracy theory themselves. You actually can control the forces on the ground, and you could be pointing blame at where the blame needs to be pointed at instead of pointing it nowhere, literally up into thin air. Oh, the chemtrails are killing the ash trees. The chemtrails aren't killing the ash trees. It's incompetence on the ground. It wasn't an evil global plan. It was caused by a forestry buddy so obsessed with Sitka spruce that they ran out of space to grow native trees, so they outsourced the job to a nursery where the disease was already spreading. The ash dieback didn't mark the decline of a single species, it exposed something deeper, a system obsessed with short-term output and no regard for long-term impact. The same logic that left our ash trees vulnerable is now warping our entire relationship with timber itself. Because while native species vanish from our landscape, most of the wood we grow never even stays here. Ireland's in the middle of a housing crisis and developers are quick to pass every cost on to the buyer. We grow it, we cut it, and then we ship it abroad. Yes, a solution to the housing crisis literally growing out of the ground, and we're letting other countries build with it. So why aren't we building with timber here? Well, partly because we never tried, and partly because the timber we do grow, all of that Sitka spruce, isn't ideal for modern construction in its current form. And don't think about that for too long. Don't think about what we've been planting for the last 50 years and how did we not plant the right trees or grow them in the right way that they wouldn't be good for construction. Don't ask those questions. So in its current form, it's not great. That's why we ship it abroad, because we don't have the modern infrastructure to process it properly. We don't have the advanced sawmills. We don't have any large-scale investment in engineered wood like cross-laminated timber. We've no serious strategy to turn what we grow into what we need. And other countries do. In Sweden, Finland, and parts of Canada, they use Sitka spruce, but they grow it slower, they process it better, and they plan for long term. We haven't done any of that. Ireland exports an astonishing 90% of its timber, gone, processed elsewhere, sold back to us at a premium in the form of furniture, panels, and prefab systems. Meanwhile, countries like Sweden and Austria have shown what's possible. They've invested in timber construction, developed domestic supply chains, and built entire industries around sustainable housing. Gosh, that sounds like something we should do. Timber-framed homes, modular builds, cross-laminated timber, they've made it standard and it works. Ireland, on the other hand, yoo-hoo, we export our raw materials and then we import the finished products. We have no tertiary industry, we have no advanced sawmills, no serious investment in timber innovation. We've done almost nothing to prepare for what comes next, despite having filled our landscape with tree crops. If we redirected even a portion of that timber for domestic use, we could slash building costs, cut down emissions, and give small businesses access to local sustainable materials. We don't just need more trees, we need a system that knows what to do with them. I'm afraid somebody has to sit down and make this happen. You know, somebody in politics. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, in 2024 a deal was quietly finalised, with absolutely zero regard for our history, our culture, or our land. And without consulting the people, Coillte handed over vast swaths of Irish land for €1.3 billion. And usually you ask for permission before you screw someone. The Irish people didn't get the timber, we didn't get the carbon credits, we got nothing. So 2003, EU law changed. So now governments couldn't directly fund forestry, which is exactly what Coillte is, and its sole purpose was to be funded by the government to develop forestry. Can't do that anymore, so the government did the only sensible thing they could do. They built a new public model. Of course they didn't. Don't be silly. They did nothing. Just let that sink in. They did nothing for 20 years. So Coillte just said, feck it, let's sell the forests. So they partnered with Gresham House to get private capital flowing in, and in doing so, sold off vast swaths of Irish land. Gresham House didn't just get the trees, they got access to Coiltte's forest certification systems that take years and serious money to establish. That certification gives timber a premium value, pricing smaller landowners out of the market before they even begin. It's less of a partnership, more of a handover. And by the time the public found out, despite the outrage, even from politicians, the deal was too far along to stop. We didn't just sell our forests, we normalized the idea that it was acceptable. And that's the Coillte Effect, a national blind spot where no one is held accountable, where the institutions meant to protect the public interest actively undermined it, where government bodies drift into private fiefdoms, untouchable, unaccountable, and unchecked, and where the people you voted into power, the politicians, have no control. the Coillte Effect. They aren't even subject to the Freedom of Information Act, a state-owned company that we can't even question, and so we're left with speculation and silence and a land we no longer control. And yet, across the country, something is stirring. Volunteers, community groups, ordinary people are stepping in to do the work that Coillte won't. Projects like the Gaelic Woodland Project are planting native trees, restoring habitats, and trying piece by piece to rebuild what was lost. But this shouldn't be the work of charities, it should be a national priority. Because this isn't just about trees, it's about water quality, soil health, flood resilience, carbon storage, national identity, mental health, and long-term survival. The good news is that we don't need to wait a century. This isn't a space program, it's not even a children's hospital, it's planting trees. With the right will, the right funding, and the right plan, we could restore large areas of native woodland within a single generation. By the time I'm dying, I could be walking around in a native forest that wasn't here today. That would be really nice. We have the land, we have the knowledge, and for the first time in a long time, we even have the money. The western front of Ireland holds the key. With a low population density, a warming climate, and rising humidity from the Atlantic, it's the perfect location for large-scale temperate rainforest regeneration. The more tree cover we establish there, the greater the buffer we build against the storms and the weather systems that are coming. This isn't just climate adaptation, it's climate defense. But to get there, we need to rethink how we approach land. Right now, farmers are offered restoration schemes that pay out in stages, with conditions, delays, and endless bureaucracy. There's no long-term incentives, just paperwork and piecemeal promises. Super, that's what we want, paperwork. This needs to change. We should be paying farmers well and upfront for any land they're willing to return to nature, not in dribs and drabs, but as a one-time generous payment for permanent restoration. If charities can do it, why can't the state? No more monocultures, no more half measures, just clean, fair transition for those who want to be part of the solution. And the benefits aren't just environmental. Just 20 minutes in a forest can reduce cortisol levels by up to 16%. Being in a forest calms you down, and boy do I know some people who could do with a long walk in a forest. They also lower blood pressure, improve focus, and boost your immune system. Trees make you feel better. They don't just store carbon, they store peace and memory and meaning. We can build something better, a network of real, breathing, living woodlands owned by the people, for the people, and protected for generations to come. But it won't happen by accident. It happens when we stop accepting scraps, when we demand more than monocultures and greenwash deals, when we say no to short-term profits and yes to long-term restoration. It's time to take back control of our land, of our resources, and of our future, just like we must take it back in housing, in energy, in governance. And it starts by planting the right trees in the right places for the right reasons.